Rain glazed the sidewalk in a thin silver sheet as Amina Carter stepped out of the downtown courthouse, folders pressed against her chest, her breath warm in the cold morning air. She was tired, 3 hearings back-to-back, but steady. Always steady. She reached her car, unlocked it and froze. A police cruiser angled behind her bumper. Lights off. Engine running. Then Officer Blake Harlan stepped out, jaw clenched like someone preparing for a fight already decided. "Ma'am," he said sharply, "this vehicle's been flagged." "Step away." Hands visible. Amina blinked. "Flagged? That's impossible. That's my car." "Sure it is," he muttered, circling her, hand resting on his holster. "Registration probably isn't even yours. Fraud's common these days." The word cracked through her like ice. Fraud, sharp, familiar, hateful in the way he said it. People on the sidewalk slowed, watching. A bystander took out a phone. Amina kept her voice even. "Officer, I'm on my way to." "I said step back." Blake snapped. "Don't talk over me." Something inside her tightened. Not fear. A kind of weary fury, old as every micro-dismissal she'd swallowed to survive. She opened her bag slowly, pulling out her ID badge, the one she rarely showed outside the courthouse. But before she could speak, Blake yanked the badge from her hand. He stared at it, frowning as if it offended him. "Judicial Office of the State," he read aloud with a snort. "Yeah right. Nice fake. You really think you can pretend to be a judge?" Amina met his eyes. "I don't pretend," she whispered. But he wasn't listening. His radio crackled. A warrant number. Name. His name. And the moment she heard it, the world stopped. He was wanted for investigation. He was headed to trial. Her courtroom. Rain misted across the parking lot as Amina Carter adjusted her coat and approached her sedan. The day had already drained her. Motions, hearings, long arguments, but she kept her shoulders squared, her steps controlled. She unlocked the door and felt the small relief of ending a long shift. Then a voice sliced in. "Ma'am, step away from the car. Hands where I can see them." She turned slowly. Officer Blake Harlan marched toward her. Eyes narrowed like she'd already committed a crime. Amina blinked. "Is something wrong, officer?" "Plenty." He circled the front bumper, tapping his flashlight against the hood. This vehicle was flagged. Suspicious registration. "Step back." Amina breathed carefully. "Flagged. That must be a mistake. This is my car." "Sure," he said, sarcasm thick. "Got ID?" "Yes." She opened her bag. "Slow," he barked. "Don't try anything." Amina froze at the tone. She lifted her hands slightly. "I'm just retrieving my wallet." He didn't soften. "People lie about car ownership all the time. Fraud rings everywhere. You fit a profile." Her chest tightened. "A profile? Don't play dumb," he muttered. A small audience formed. Pedestrians pausing, a phone camera raised. Amina forced calm into her voice. "Officer, I work." "Did I ask where you work?" Blake snapped. "Hand me your license." She did. He barely glanced at it before leaning forward. Too close, eyes judging every inch of her. "You don't look like the owner of a 2022 vehicle," he said. Her jaw clenched. "What does that mean?" "It means this registration isn't yours." He held up the card she'd handed him. Fraud. Impersonation. Maybe both. Amina steadied her breath. "Officer, read the name carefully." "I did. And," he shrugged, "could be fake. Happens every day." She took a careful step. "I can show you my state identification. I'm an officer of the court." Blake smirked. "Everyone's something these days." Amina pulled out her official badge, a metal emblem she rarely used outside the courthouse. She held it out. Blake snatched it before she could speak. He turned it in his hand. "Judicial Office of the State." He scoffed. "Come on. You expect me to believe this? A judge. You." "That is my badge," she said quietly. "Fake. Obviously." "It's not." He ignored her, lifting his radio. "Dispatch, I need confirmation." A strong voice cut in behind them. "Harlan! What the hell are you doing?" Blake stiffened. Sergeant Lewis strode toward them, rain streaking down his hat. His eyes flicked between Amina and Blake, instantly reading the tension. "She was trying to pass off fake credentials," Blake said defensively. Lewis grabbed the badge from him and examined it. His expression changed immediately. "This is legitimate. Judge Carter, I'm very sorry." Officer Harlan stepped back. Blake frowned. "No way. That's not." "Now," Lewis ordered. Blake retreated a few inches, but his glare stayed locked on Amina, burning with resentment. Lewis handed her the badge gently. "Judge Carter, are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said, though the tremor in her chest told another story. "This shouldn't have happened," Lewis murmured. Blake scoffed. "So she gets special treatment because she's a judge?" Lewis turned sharply. "She gets respect because she's a human being." Blake rolled his eyes. "Right." Amina inhaled. "I'd like to leave now." "Of course," Lewis said. He stepped aside. Blake muttered under his breath, "Fraud. Could have fooled me." Amina paused. "Officer Harlan." He looked up irritably. "You spoke to me as if I was already guilty," she said softly. "You didn't ask questions. You assumed. That assumption could have gotten someone hurt." He shrugged. "If you can't take pressure, don't pretend to be what you're not." Lewis stepped forward. "Harlan, enough." Amina didn't respond. She simply got into her car, closed the door, and swallowed hard as she drove away. But 3 blocks later her phone buzzed. A message from the clerk's office. "Judge Carter, you have been assigned the Harlan misconduct hearing. Preliminary review tomorrow morning." Amina's heart stilled. Harlan. The same name the dispatcher had said. The same name tied to an internal investigation. The same man who just called her a fraud. She pulled over, gripping the steering wheel as the realization sank in. Tomorrow she would sit on the bench. And he would stand before her. Morning light pushed through the blinds of Amina Carter's apartment as she sat at the kitchen table, a mug of untouched tea cooling beside her. She had slept little. Every time she closed her eyes, Blake Harlan's voice returned. Sharp, contemptuous, confidently wrong. Her phone buzzed again. Her mentor, Judge Evelyn Rowe, appeared on the screen. Amina answered quietly. "Good morning. You sound exhausted," Rowe said. "Rough night." Amina exhaled. "I have the Harlan case today." Oh paused. "The same officer who detained you?" "Yes." Soft hum. "Talk to me." Amina rubbed her temples. "I'm unsettled. Yesterday I was treated like a criminal in broad daylight. Today I have to sit on the bench and pretend I feel nothing." "That's not pretending," Rowe replied. "It's judging. And you've always been good at it." Amina didn't respond. Rowe added, "Do you want to recuse yourself?" Amina let silence stretch. "Is that what you think I should do?" "I think you should tell me why you're hesitating." Amina stood and paced. "If I recuse myself, it tells him his behavior got to me. That he can shake me. But if I stay, people may claim bias." "They'll claim things no matter what," Rowe said. "We don't serve to be liked. We serve the law." Amina leaned against the counter. "It feels heavier than law." "It's always heavier," Rowe murmured. "Especially for people like us." Amina swallowed. "I'm tired of swallowing things." "Then stop swallowing," Rowe said. "But don't let one man push you off balance." Amina nodded faintly, though Rowe couldn't see it. Later that morning, Amina walked into chambers as clerks whispered across the hallways. One clerk stopped her gently. "Judge Carter. The videos are circulating." Her breath caught. "What videos?" "Of the stop. People recorded it." Amina stiffened. "Already?" "Yes, ma'am. There's a lot of discussion." Amina managed a controlled nod and continued walking, but inside a knot tightened. She needed no explanation. She had seen this cycle before. outrage, arguments, think pieces, hashtags. Strangers deciding what her experience meant. She had hoped yesterday would stay just another bruise she carried quietly. But the world had other plans. Inside chambers, her law clerk, Gabe, waited with a nervous expression. "Judge Carter," he said. "Before we begin prepping for the hearing, something came in." He handed her an envelope. Amina opened it. Letter. Handwritten. From someone she hadn't heard from in years. Professor Whitman, her law school evidence instructor. Amina read the first lines. "I saw the footage. I hope you've grown thicker skin since my class. The public expects steadiness from judges, especially those representing minority communities. Don't let emotion interfere with duty." Amina's jaw tightened. Gabe watched her face. "Is it bad?" "It's familiar," she said quietly. "Do you want me to throw it out?" She folded the letter carefully. "No. I'll keep it." Gabe hesitated. "Judge, if you need support." "I'm fine," she said. But the weight behind her silence betrayed her. A memory rose vividly, her third year of law school. Whitman standing at the lectern, looking down at her. "You're too reactive, Miss Carter," he'd said after she challenged a discriminatory hypothetical. "Objectivity requires distance. You cannot legislate your own experience." She had replied, voice steady despite trembling hands. "My experience is why I understand what the law fails to protect." Whitman had dismissed her with a thin smile. "Idealism. It fades." But it never had. It sharpened, hardened, became her compass. "Back in the present," Gabe said. "The prosecution's brief arrived early. They're confident about this case." "And the department?" Amina asked. "They're circling wagons. Lots of statements about protocol and misunderstandings." Amina sighed. "Of course. Judge Carter," he said more softly, "you don't have to take the bench today. You could step aside. No one would blame you." Amina turned to him. "Gabe, do you know how many times someone has told me to step aside? To soften. To stay quiet so I don't seem emotional or biased or angry." He lowered his eyes. "Too many." "Yes." She inhaled deeply. "So I will not add one more time to that list." Across town in the police station, Blake Harlan slammed his locker shut. His partner, Kurt, leaned against the wall. "Heard you're up for a misconduct hearing." "Yeah," Blake muttered. "Some activist judge is trying to nail me." Kurt raised an eyebrow. "Activist? Or did you screw up?" "I followed procedure," Blake snapped. "Lady had a car that didn't match the profile. She got mouthy." "That's it." Kurt shrugged. "The video looks bad." "People record everything these days," Blake said. "You can't do your job without someone itching for clicks." A younger officer stepped in. "Harlan, word is the judge on your case is black." Blake interrupted with a laugh. "Yeah, I figured. Probably hates cops." The young officer winced. "I didn't say that." "But it's true." Blake paced. "She set me up. That badge was probably fake." The sergeant fell for it. Kurt asked, "Are you going to apologize? Might help your case." "Apologize?" Blake barked. "For what?" "Doing my job." "Well, I'm going in there strong." "Strong or stupid?" Kurt asked. But Blake didn't answer. In the courtroom hallway, Amina adjusted her robe, breathing through the tension coiled under her ribs. Roe approached quietly. "Still standing." "Barely." "That's standing enough." Roe squeezed her shoulder. "Remember, the bench is not armor. It is a responsibility." Amina nodded. "I know." "Good. Then go fulfill it." Her clerk opened the door. "Judge Carter, we're ready." Amina stepped inside, feeling the shift in the air, the hush, the expectation, the quiet judgment waiting in every gaze. She took her seat on the bench. The bailiff announced, "People versus Officer Blake Harlan." The courtroom doors opened. Blake walked in. And when he saw who sat above him, his face froze. Shock, disbelief. Then something sharp and ugly flickered in his eyes. Amina held his gaze calmly. Because silence wasn't surrender. It was power. And he was about to learn that. The following morning, a cluster of reporters gathered on the courthouse steps. Their breath fogged in the cold air as they shouted overlapping questions. Judge Carter, is it true the officer detained you illegally? Has the department reached out with an apology? Are you presiding over his hearing today? Amina kept walking, gaze straight ahead, posture unchanged. She did not respond. Words spoken out of turn could compromise the case. Silence was her shield. Inside, Gabe rushed toward her. Judge, important update. What happened now? She asked, removing her gloves. The complaint, he said. It's official. Amina blinked. Complaint filed by who? A community rights group, Justice Access Network. They submitted a formal misconduct complaint on your behalf. Amina frowned. On my behalf. I didn't authorize anything. I know, Gabe said. But they filed it anyway, citing the video. They're demanding disciplinary action and a review of racial bias protocols. Amina inhaled slowly. This complicates things. Gabe lowered his voice. They're holding a press briefing outside in 20 minutes. They're telling people you were targeted and humiliated. She rubbed her forehead. I don't need public pity. I need due process. Gabe hesitated. You could talk to them. No, she said firmly. The moment I comment, it becomes political. And if the defense argues bias, it could undermine everything. He nodded silently. Downstairs, the Justice Access Network spokesperson, Marcia Hill, stood beside microphones. This is not an isolated incident, Marcia declared. This is a pattern of racial profiling, intimidation, and misconduct. Judge or not, a black woman was treated as a criminal. That is the heart of the issue. A reporter asked. Has Judge Carter spoken to you? No, Marcia replied. But this isn't about her permission. It's about accountability. Amina watched from the second-floor railing, unseen by the crowd. She understood their passion. She also understood how quickly compassion turned into noise that drowned out law. She whispered to herself, I didn't ask for this storm. Later, in her chambers, Roe entered unannounced. Saw the press conference. Amina sighed. I'm losing control of the narrative. You never had control, Roe said gently. Cases with racial dynamics never stay in court. They spill into streets, offices, phones. I worry it will harm the hearing, Amina said. He'll claim I'm part of a public witch hunt. Roe nodded. He might. But that doesn't change facts. Amina sank into her chair. Why does everything have to become a battlefield? Because justice is messy, Roe said. Especially when truth touches power. Amina looked up. Should I recuse? Roe shook her head. You should ask yourself a different question. Would recusing protect justice, or protect you from discomfort? Amina exhaled. Sometimes discomfort feels like drowning. Roe placed a hand on her shoulder. And yet you swim. Across town, Blake paced the police station briefing room while the department attorney, Samuel Briggs, laid out the stakes. Let me be clear, Briggs said. This looks bad. The video shows escalation without justification. Blake scoffed. People don't understand pressure. Pressure doesn't excuse misconduct, Briggs replied. Kurt added. Harlan, you should consider apologizing. For what? Blake snapped. For stopping a suspicious person in a suspicious car? Briggs interjected. You accused a state judge of fraud. She wasn't wearing anything that said judge. You don't need a robe to deserve respect, Briggs said. Blake rolled his eyes. She set me up. All these groups protesting. She probably called them. Kurt shook his head. I doubt that. Doesn't matter, Blake muttered. Everyone wants to ruin a cop's life these days. Briggs leaned forward. Harlan, listen carefully. The hearing is today. If you go in there defensive and combative, you're done. So you want me to grovel? I want you to show remorse. I'm not sorry, Blake said flatly. She made me look like a fool. Briggs closed the folder slowly. No, Officer Harlan, you did that on your own. Blake glared but said nothing. Back at the courthouse, Amina stood in chambers, reviewing the case file. Her hands hovered above the documents. The stop report was short, full of vague language. Suspicious demeanor. Uncooperative tone. Possible fraudulent conduct. She whispered. Suspicious demeanor? I barely spoke. Gabe watched her from the desk. His language is boilerplate, Judge. Many use it to justify thin stops. Which is exactly the problem, she murmured. Gabe hesitated. Judge. Did it feel racist to you? Amina closed her eyes. I don't like naming things I can't prove. But you felt it. She opened her eyes slowly. Yes, he nodded. Then trust that feeling. You're not imagining this, Amina whispered. Feelings don't win hearings. Facts do. Yes, Gabe said. But facts don't exist without someone who's willing to see them. Amina looked at him, grateful for the honesty. As the hearing hour approached, the courthouse buzzed with emotion. Community members filled the gallery. Officers filled the opposite side. Two worlds separated by a middle aisle. Amina stood behind the courtroom doors, breathing steadily. Gabe asked, Ready? No, she said honestly. But open the doors anyway. He pushed them wide. Heads turned instantly. Amina walked in, robe flowing behind her, posture unbreakable even as tension coiled beneath her skin. The bailiff called out, All rise for Judge Carter. People rose. Amina took her seat. Blake stood at the defense table, jaw clenched. He refused to look away from her. The attorney beside him whispered urgently, Harlan, don't antagonize the judge. Blake muttered, She's the one antagonizing me. Amina tapped her gavel once. Court is now in session. Her voice echoed across the room. Even. Controlled. We are here for a preliminary hearing regarding alleged misconduct by Officer Blake Harlan. She looked directly at Blake. Officer, do you understand the charges being reviewed today? Blake straightened. I understand that this is a setup. Gasps rippled through the gallery. His attorney hissed, Harlan, stop. But the words were already loose, sharp, damning. Amina inhaled through her nose, holding her composure like a fragile shell. This court, she said slowly, does not tolerate unfounded accusations or disrespect. Blake folded his arms. Then you might want to recuse yourself. Amina held his gaze. Proceed, she told the attorneys. The hearing began. And the room felt like a fuse had been lit. Tension buzzed in the air long after the gallery emptied. Reporters pushed microphones toward officers. Community members whispered in clusters. No one left neutral. Everyone left choosing sides. Amina remained seated on the bench, waiting until the room cleared. When the last door shut behind a lingering officer, she finally allowed herself a slow breath. Gabe approached cautiously. Judge, that was intense. Amina pressed her palms into the desk. He challenged my legitimacy in open court. He wanted to provoke you. And I can't let him succeed, she said, standing. No matter what he throws. Gabe nodded. The prosecution wants to continue with depositions this afternoon. Good, she replied. We move forward. But inside she felt the tremor of a deeper storm. Something personal, targeted, calculated. Across town, in the police union building, a small group of officers clustered in a break room. Their murmurs grew louder when Blake entered. Kurt leaned against the counter. Harlan, you really walked into court and said it was a setup? In front of everyone. Blake shrugged. Someone had to say it. Another officer, Derek, muttered. This is what happens when they put activists on the bench. Kurt shot him a warning look. Don't start. Derek smirked. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Not everyone, Kurt snapped. Some of us know she's a good judge. Blake scoffed. Good. She's out to destroy my career. She's doing her job, Kurt replied. Maybe you should do yours. Derek cut in. You sound like you're siding with her. Kurt glared. I'm siding with the truth. Blake slammed a fist on the table. You weren't there. She looked at me like I was nothing. Like I was a criminal. Kurt raised his eyebrows. And how did you look at her yesterday? Blake fell silent. The room didn't. Another officer whispered. He's screwed. The video, the judge, the complaint. Whole department's talking. Blake's face reddened. No. I'm not going down alone. At the courthouse, Amina walked into chambers, shoulders heavy but posture firm. Ro was waiting. You handled yourself well, Ro said. Amina dropped her robe onto the chair. It didn't feel like it. That's because he tried to rattle you, Ro said. He wants you emotional. Amina sighed. I know. Did you see his face when he realized you had authority over him? Yes, Amina said quietly. Resentment. Like I stole something from him. Ro nodded slowly. Men like him aren't afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of accountability. Amina sat at her desk. Sometimes I wonder if accountability even matters. If systems this large can change. Ro sat across from her. You're not here to fix the whole world. You're here to weigh one truth at a time. Amina whispered. Then today was a heavy truth. Downstairs, Gabe sorted documents while Amina read through Blake's personnel file. The deeper she read, the tighter her chest grew. Amina looked up. Gabe. This isn't his first complaint. Gabe nodded grimly. No. 3 prior ones filed. All dismissed internally. All dismissed, she repeated. Same language. Same patterns. Yes, Gabe said. Which is why this case is important. Amina closed the file slowly. We have to be careful. If the defense suggests bias because of yesterday's stop. They will, Gabe said quickly. But the evidence stands. Patterns stand. Amina stared at the file. Patterns are not enough for a conviction. No, Gabe said. But they're enough to show credibility and motive. She nodded, expression solemn. At the police union office, Briggs, the departmental attorney, met with Blake privately. You're losing support, Briggs said bluntly. Blake scowled. Cowards. No, Briggs corrected. Realists. They saw the video. They heard what you said in court. I was defending myself. You were attacking a judge, Briggs replied. Not wise. Blake crossed his arms. She hates me. You don't know that. I can feel it, Blake insisted. Briggs leaned back. That's projection. Blake clenched his jaw. She wants to crush me. Briggs sighed. Officer Harlan, you need to understand something. This case isn't about you versus her. It's about your actions versus department policy. And if she twists it. Briggs stared at him. She's a judge. She interprets law. She doesn't twist things. Blake laughed bitterly. Maybe you're blind too. Briggs' voice sharpened. If you keep this attitude, you'll lose before the trial even begins. Blake said nothing. But his silence was thick with rage. Later that afternoon, Amina prepared for depositions. Her chambers felt unusually cold, the air heavy with anticipation. Gabe entered. Defense wants to push for dismissal based on perceived conflict. Amina raised an eyebrow. Perceived by who? Blake, Gabe said. And his attorney is claiming the viral video may bias you against their client. Amina exhaled long and slow. Bias is not a feeling. It's an action. Gabe nodded. And your actions are impeccable. Amina looked toward the courtroom door. Then let's proceed. If they want to test my neutrality, they'll see it. During the deposition, the prosecution questioned Blake's previous supervisor, Sergeant Lewis. Sergeant, did Officer Harlan follow proper de-escalation protocol during the stop? Lewis shifted uncomfortably. Not fully. And did he have sufficient cause to accuse the driver of fraud? Lewis hesitated. From the video? No. Blake stared daggers at him from across the table. Lewis added, I intervened because the stop was escalating unnecessarily. The room froze. Blake whispered loudly, Coward. His attorney hissed, Harlan, stop. Amina, observing from the bench, remained expressionless, but she felt the weight of every word. When the deposition ended, Lewis approached her quietly. Judge Carter, I know an apology can't undo yesterday. But for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Amina studied him. You did the right thing by intervening. That matters. Lewis nodded, guilt etched across his face. Blake watched them, bitterness radiating from him like heat. After the proceedings, Amina returned to chambers. Gabe closed the door behind them. Judge, he's unraveling, Gabe said. Blake keeps lashing out. It's only getting worse. Amina rubbed her forehead. He's under pressure. Pressure reveals character. And his character doesn't look great. No, she agreed softly. It doesn't. A long moment passed. Judge, Gabe said cautiously. You know tomorrow's session will be even more volatile. Yes, she said. And I'll be ready. Gabe eyed her nervously. Doesn't it scare you? Amina met his gaze. Of course it does. He blinked. Then why keep going? She answered quietly. Because fear doesn't absolve responsibility. It makes it more necessary. Across town, in a dimly lit bar, Blake sat alone nursing a drink. Officers whispered about him from nearby tables but didn't join him. He overheard. He embarrassed the department. Judge Carter is respected. He's not winning this. Should have apologized. Blake gripped his glass until his knuckles whitened. He muttered, I'll show her. I'll show all of them. But the room had already turned its back on him. Lines weren't just drawn. They were deepening. Amina stepped into the courtroom the next morning, her robe trailing behind her like a quiet shadow. The gallery was already packed, reporters in the back rows, police officers on one side, community advocates on the other. The divide was physical, visible, almost vibrating. Gabe whispered, They arrived early. Everyone's waiting for a showdown. Amina didn't respond. She knew better than to give tension any acknowledgement. Instead, she adjusted her glasses, sat down, and struck the gavel once. Court is now in session. Her voice carried a steady authority, though inside she felt that familiar knot of fear, restraint, and duty tightening beneath her ribs. The bailiff opened the door. Blake Harlan entered with his attorney, Briggs, beside him. His jaw was set. His eyes locked directly on her bench, a hard stare that tried and failed to intimidate. Amina didn't flinch. Briggs bowed his head slightly. Good morning, Your Honor. Amina nodded. Counsel. Blake muttered something under his breath. Briggs elbowed him sharply. Sit, he hissed. Amina addressed the room. This is the commencement of the formal misconduct trial for Officer Blake Harlan. All testimony will be under oath. The court expects professionalism from all participants. She said the last line deliberately. Blake smirked in response. The prosecutor, Dana Morales, opened the case. Your Honor, the people intend to demonstrate that Officer Harlan conducted an unlawful stop based on racial profiling, escalated without cause, and submitted a falsified report to justify his actions. Blake scoffed audibly. Amina fixed her gaze on him. Officer Harlan, you will remain silent unless addressed. Briggs whispered urgently. Do not provoke the judge. Blake leaned back, arms folded. Dana continued. We will call witnesses who observed the encounter, present video evidence, and reveal discrepancies in Officer Harlan's written statements. Briggs rose. Your Honor, the defense intends to show that the stop was legal, justified, and conducted according to department protocol. Furthermore, we will demonstrate that the widespread media attention and public pressure may influence this court's ability to remain neutral. Whispers rippled through the gallery. Amina's jaw tightened. She spoke evenly. This court's neutrality is not up for debate. We will proceed based on evidence alone. Briggs nodded reluctantly. Understood, Your Honor. The first witness was a bystander from the video, Lena Caldwell, a middle-aged woman with a cane. Dana asked, Ms. Caldwell, can you describe what you saw? Lena adjusted her glasses. I saw the officer approach the woman near her car. He yelled at her. He grabbed her badge. He talked to her like she was trash. Briggs stood quickly. Objection, characterization. Rephrase, Dana said. What did he say? Lena cleared her throat. He said she didn't look like the owner of the car. He called her a fraud. Blake muttered. I said possible fraud. There's a difference. Amina shot him a warning look. Officer Harlan's silence. He glared at her but shut his mouth. Dana played the video on the screen. Amina watched the moment unfold. The hostility, the assumption, the power imbalance. She forced her face to remain calm. But inside, she felt the echo of every time she'd been underestimated. Every time someone doubted her right to belong. Briggs cross-examined. Ms. Caldwell, were you aware this woman was a judge? No, she said. And did the officer know? No. So he treated her as he would treat any civilian. Lena frowned. Is that supposed to make it better? Briggs paused, caught off guard. No further questions, he said stiffly. During recess, Amina stepped into chambers. Gabe followed. Judge, you okay? Yes, she said, though her voice was too calm, too tight. Continue with the next witness after break. Gabe hesitated. Seeing it again must have been hard. Amina sat slowly. It's strange. Watching it, I felt like I was observing a stranger. But also, reliving it. It's not your job to relive trauma, Gabe said. No, she replied softly. Just to judge it. When court resumed, Dana called Sergeant Lewis to the stand. Sergeant, did Officer Harlan follow department policy? Lewis sighed heavily. No. He escalated unnecessarily. The judge was compliant. There was no fraud, no threat. Briggs stood. Sergeant, isn't it true that officers often deal with uncooperative individuals? Yes. And don't they rely on instinct? Instinct must be grounded in evidence, Lewis said firmly. Not assumptions. Briggs clenched his jaw. No further questions. Then came the moment everyone noticed. The defense prepared to cross-examine Amina's own identity. Briggs rose deliberately. Your Honor, the defense wishes to enter into consideration the possibility of implicit bias. Amina's pulse quickened. Bias, she repeated. Briggs cleared his throat. Given that the judge was the individual involved in the initial stop, and given the widespread public support for her, it may be reasonable to consider whether personal experience affects her ability to rule impartially. Gasps filled the gallery. Amina spoke with measured restraint. Mr. Briggs, are you formally moving for recusal? Briggs hesitated. He knew doing so without legal grounds was dangerous. We are raising the question, he said. Amina stared at him, not angry but razor-sharp. This court evaluates evidence, not insinuations. Unless you have a legal argument supported by precedent, we will proceed. Briggs swallowed. We have no such motion at this time. Then we continue, Amina said, tapping her gavel once. But inside something cracked, a thin fissure of exhaustion, of being made to prove neutrality she had never violated. Next, the prosecution introduced Blake's incident report. Dana read aloud. The suspect was evasive, hesitant, and displayed deceptive behavior. Amina's heart pounded. Suspect. Evasive. Deceptive. Words used to erase innocence and replace it with something more convenient. Dana continued. Officer Harlan, please explain how Judge Carter was evasive. Blake finally spoke. She didn't answer my questions immediately. She tried to pull out a badge. Dana raised an eyebrow. You mean the badge that confirmed her identity? It could have been fake, he said. Why assume fake? Dana asked. Because people try to trick us. Blake snapped. You expect me to trust someone who? He stopped himself, jaw-locking. Dana stepped closer. Someone who what, officer? Blake glared but said nothing. Amina watched him carefully. His silence was louder than any slur. After Dana concluded, Briggs attempted damage control. Officer Harlan, did you intend harm? No, Blake said. I was doing my job. And do you believe the judge is capable of being unbiased? Blake's eyes flicked toward Amina. He hesitated. Then, no, I don't. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs, outrage. Amina struck her gavel hard. Order! Her voice was steady, but inside, her ribs felt tight, as if holding the weight of the entire room. This was no longer a simple hearing. This was a revealing. And the truth was stepping forward, uninvited and undeniable. The courtroom felt smaller than usual, like the walls were inching inward. Amina held her posture upright on the bench, but the air pressed heavy against her chest. Blake's last words, "No, I don't," still hung like smoke. Gabe whispered from the side desk, "Judge, you don't have to respond. Let the record speak." Amina inhaled slowly. "I know." Dana rose. "Your Honor, the people request a short recess to address the witness's statement." Amina nodded. 5 minutes. The gavel struck. The gallery burst into chatter instantly. Amina slipped into chambers. Gabe followed. "He's pushing every boundary," he whispered. "He wants you off this case." Amina stood by the window, watching rain streak down the glass. "He doesn't want a fair trial. He wants immunity from consequences." Gabe exhaled. "And he thinks discrediting you is the way." Amina closed her eyes briefly. "Every woman of color in power has lived this. Your competence becomes evidence of bias the moment you hold someone accountable." Gabe hesitated. "Judge, it's okay to be angry." "Anger is dangerous here," she murmured. "Not because it's wrong, but because they'll weaponize it." He lowered his voice. "Then be steady. But don't be silent." Amina nodded. "Let's continue." Back in the courtroom, she struck the gavel. "Recess is over." Dana resumed. "Your Honor, the people request permission to introduce previous citizen complaints against Officer Harlan as pattern evidence." Briggs jumped up. "Objection. Prior complaints were dismissed internally. Irrelevant and prejudicial." Dana countered. "Dismissal doesn't negate relevance. They establish behavior." Briggs glared. "Your Honor, I renew our concern that this judge's involvement creates inherent bias." Amina leaned forward. "Counsel, unless you are filing a formal motion, your repeated insinuations are inappropriate." Briggs swallowed. "No motion at this time." "Then proceed," she said firmly. Dana presented the files. 3 prior complaints. Similar accusations. Escalating minor interactions, accusatory language, dismissive conduct, and hostility toward black civilians. The gallery murmured. Blake muttered, "People like that always complain." Amina's eyes snapped up. "Officer Harlan, last warning." He shrugged. "Just telling the truth." Dana stepped close. "What truth is that, officer?" "That they're always the victims," he said. "Always accusing us of something." Dana's voice sharpened. "And who is they?" Blake hesitated. "You know what I mean." "Say it," Dana demanded. Briggs grabbed his arm. "Do not." But Blake shook him off. "Fine. Minorities. People who don't respect authority." A gasp rippled across the gallery. Amina felt the words cut through her like glass. She steadied her voice. "Officer Harlan, this courtroom is not a place for broad generalizations about entire communities." Blake sneered. "I'm just being honest. Something this court doesn't seem to value." Briggs sank into his chair, defeated. Dana pressed forward. Officer Harlan, did you accuse Judge Carter of fraud because she is black? Blake slammed a fist on the witness stand. I accused her because she acted suspicious. Amina tapped her gavel twice. Control yourself. He pointed directly at her. You were the one escalating. You made me look incompetent. Amina held his gaze, unmoving. The video contradicts your account. The witness testimony contradicts your account. The sergeant's statement contradicts your account. Blake shouted. Because you're all against me. Officer, Briggs pleaded, but Amina raised a hand. Let him finish, she said. Blake's rage spilled unchecked. You think you're better than me because you sit up there in that robe. You think that badge means something. Doesn't. You're biased. You're emotional. Amina's voice cut through him like steel. Enough. The room froze. Her tone was controlled. Even. But the underlying force silenced every whisper. Amina stood, a rare move for a judge. Her robe cascaded down like a dark wave. Officer Harlan, your outburst demonstrates precisely why this hearing is necessary, she said. Not because of one incident, but because of a pattern. Hostility, escalation, disrespect, and refusal to accept accountability. Blake's chest heaved. You're twisting everything. No, Amina replied. I'm observing. Briggs whispered desperately. Harlan, please sit down. But Blake wasn't done. You want to ruin me, he said, voice low and shaking. You want revenge. Amina approached the bench edge, eyes steady. If I wanted revenge, officer, I would have filed a complaint myself. I did not. Others did. If I wanted revenge, I would have raised my voice when you humiliated me. I did not. If I wanted revenge. She paused, letting silence settle. I would have recused myself and let another judge handle this case. One who might have been less patient. The courtroom was dead silent. Blake swallowed hard. Amina continued. But I am here because responsibility demands it. My experiences do not disqualify me. They qualify me to recognize facts beyond bias, beyond politics, beyond fear. Dana exhaled softly. Briggs closed his eyes. Gabe watched with awe. Amina returned to her seat. Officer Harlan, she said, your conduct today will be added to the record. Blake whispered. You can't do this to me. Amina responded. You did this to yourself. Briggs stood shakily. Your Honor, the defense requests a short recess. Amina nodded. Granted. When the gavel fell, the room erupted in whispers. Reporters scribbled furiously. Officers exchanged worried glances. Community members nodded solemnly. Amina walked into chambers, collapsing gently into her chair. Her hands trembled. Gabe approached. Judge, that was necessary, she whispered. But I hate that it had to be. You were calm, firm, fair, he said. No one could argue otherwise. Amina looked down at her hands. I still feel shaken. Like one wrong breath could have broken everything. That's the cost of dignity, Gabe said. Amina closed her eyes. I know, she whispered. And the cost is high. When she returned to the courtroom, the atmosphere had shifted. Blake sat rigid. His anger drained into something dimmer. Fear, perhaps, or dawning realization. Amina struck the gavel. We will now proceed. Judgment will be delivered tomorrow morning. Blake looked up, eyes burning but uncertain. Amina held his gaze one last time. Court is adjourned. The gavel echoed like a final warning. Tomorrow everything would break. Or everything would change. The courthouse felt unnaturally quiet the next morning. Too still, too expectant. Amina arrived early, robe draped over her arm. Footsteps echoing down the hallway like a heartbeat she was trying to steady. Gabe met her at chambers. Judge, everything's ready. Reporters are outside. Police union issued a statement this morning. Amina paused. What did they say? That they support due process. Gabe hesitated. And they believe Officer Harlan deserves fair consideration free from public pressure. Amina gave a small, humorless smile. Meaning they're preparing for the worst. Most likely, Gabe said. Amina hung her robe on the chair for a moment. Gabe, do I seem angry to you? As a judge, I mean. He blinked. No, you seem composed. Tired maybe. Human. Human feels risky, she whispered. He softened. Human keeps you just. She nodded, gathering herself. Let's begin. When Amina stepped into the courtroom, the gallery rose. The divide was even sharper today. Officers in crisp uniforms, community advocates standing shoulder to shoulder. A heavy silence blanketed them all. Amina took her seat. Please be seated. She surveyed the room. Blake sat stiffly at the defense table. Hands clasped so tightly his knuckles blanched. Briggs leaned toward him, whispering urgently, but Blake didn't respond. Amina folded her hands. This court will now deliver its judgment. Blake lifted his chin, defiant but trembling. Amina began, voice steady and clear. The evidence presented demonstrates a pattern of conduct inconsistent with the duties and responsibilities of law enforcement. Dana nodded subtly. Briggs closed his eyes. Amina continued. Witness testimony, video evidence, and departmental statements show that Officer Harlan escalated an encounter without reasonable suspicion, employed accusatory language unsupported by facts, and filed a report containing inaccurate descriptions of the civilian involved. Blake burst out, "She's biased." Amina raised her hand. "Officer Harlan, you will remain silent." Briggs tugged sharply at Blake's sleeve. "Don't do this." Amina resumed. "This case is not about one stop. It is about a consistent pattern. Dismissed complaints, misuse of authority, and repeated escalation in interactions with black civilians." A hush spread through the gallery. Amina turned the page. "The court acknowledges the defense's concern regarding potential bias due to my involvement in the initial incident." Blake smirked faintly. Amina looked directly at him. "However, this court finds that my personal experience neither alters the facts nor supplants them. If anything, it provides clarity, because the law must be tested not only in theory, but in the reality of lived consequences." Gabe watched her, pride softening his features. Amina's voice grew steadier. "Therefore, based on the evidence, this court finds Officer Blake Harlan guilty of misconduct, violation of departmental policy, and submission of a falsified report." The gallery erupted. Gasps, murmurs, whispered prayers, angry huffs. Officers stiffened. Advocates exchanged looks of vindication. Blake stood abruptly. "You ruined my life." Briggs rose quickly. "Officer, stop." But Blake pointed at Amina, rage boiling over. "You planned this. You humiliated me yesterday to set this whole thing up." Amina remained still. "Officer Harlan, approach the bench only if instructed. You want me gone because you hate cops." "I gave you every opportunity to defend yourself," she replied calmly. "Your own words formed your downfall." Blake's voice cracked. "This isn't justice." "No," Amina said quietly. "This is accountability." Briggs grabbed him by the arm. "Sit down, Blake. Now." But Blake's rage spun into desperation. "I've served for 15 years. I've protected this city. And you just sit there judging everyone." Amina's face softened, not with sympathy, but with a fatigue she'd carried for years. "I do not judge everyone," she said softly. "I judge actions. Today yours." Silence fell. Deep absolute. Briggs finally pulled Blake down into his chair. Blake stared at the table, chest heaving, face crumbling into something raw, unguarded, frightened. Amina continued. "As for sentencing recommendations, this court refers the matter to the disciplinary board with a strong recommendation for termination and mandatory bias training prior to any future reinstatement requests." A single officer in the gallery whispered, "Damn." Another quietly said, "It was coming." Blake's hand shook violently. "This isn't fair," he whispered. Amina looked at him. Not with cruelty, not with triumph, but with weary truth. Fairness, she said, is what happens when power stops bending the rules for itself. The gavel struck once. This court is adjourned. The moment she left the bench, the gallery exploded. Reporters shouting questions, community members cheering or crying, officers retreating in tight formation. Cameras flashed. Voices echoed. Amina kept walking. Through the noise. Through the chaos. Through the storm she never asked for. She stepped into chambers, closing the door gently behind her. Her shoulders sagged. Gabe whispered, "Judge, it's done." Amina sank into her chair. "Yes. And it cost more than anyone will ever know." He nodded quietly. "Justice always does." Her eyes closed. She finally let herself feel the tremor she'd been holding in. Tomorrow she would face the world again. But today she needed silence. The courthouse felt unnaturally quiet the next morning. Too still, too expectant. Amina arrived early, robe draped over her arm, footsteps echoing down the hallway like a heartbeat she was trying to steady. Gabe met her at chambers. "Judge, everything's ready. Reporters are outside. Police union issued a statement this morning." Amina paused. "What did they say?" "That they support due process." Gabe hesitated. "And they believe Officer Harlan deserves fair consideration free from public pressure." Amina gave a small, humorless smile. "Meaning they're preparing for the worst." "Most likely," Gabe said. Amina hung her robe on the chair for a moment. "Gabe, do I seem angry to you? As a judge, I mean." He blinked. "No, you seem composed. Tired maybe. Human." "Human feels risky," she whispered. He softened. "Human keeps you just." She nodded, gathering herself. "Let's begin." When Amina stepped into the courtroom, the gallery rose. The divide was even sharper today. Officers in crisp uniforms, community advocates standing shoulder to shoulder. A heavy silence blanketed them all. Amina took her seat. "Please be seated." She surveyed the room. Blake sat stiffly at the defense table, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles blanched. Briggs leaned toward him, whispering urgently, but Blake didn't respond. Amina folded her hands. "This court will now deliver its judgment." Blake lifted his chin, defiant but trembling. Amina began, voice steady and clear. "The evidence presented demonstrates a pattern of conduct inconsistent with the duties and responsibilities of law enforcement." Dana nodded subtly. Briggs closed his eyes. Amina continued. "Witness testimony, video evidence, and departmental statements show that Officer Harlan escalated an encounter without reasonable suspicion, employed accusatory language unsupported by facts, and filed a report containing inaccurate descriptions of the civilian involved." Blake burst out, "She's biased." Amina raised her hand. "Officer Harlan, you will remain silent." Briggs tugged sharply at Blake's sleeve. "Don't do this." Amina resumed. "This case is not about one stop. It is about a consistent pattern. Dismissed complaints, misuse of authority, and repeated escalation in interactions with black civilians." A hush spread through the gallery. Amina turned the page. "The court acknowledges the defense's concern regarding potential bias due to my involvement in the initial incident." Blake smirked faintly. Amina looked directly at him. "However, this court finds that my personal experience neither alters the facts nor supplants them. If anything, it provides clarity, because the law must be tested not only in theory, but in the reality of lived consequences." Gabe watched her, pride softening his features. Amina's voice grew steadier. "Therefore, based on the evidence, this court finds Officer Blake Harlan guilty of misconduct, violation of departmental policy, and submission of a falsified report." The gallery erupted. Gasps, murmurs, whispered prayers, angry huffs. Officers stiffened. Advocates exchanged looks of vindication. Blake stood abruptly. "You ruined my life." Briggs rose quickly. "Officer, stop." But Blake pointed at Amina, rage boiling over. "You planned this. You humiliated me yesterday to set this whole thing up. Amina remained still. Officer Harlan, approach the bench only if instructed. You want me gone because you hate cops. I gave you every opportunity to defend yourself, she replied calmly. Your own words formed your downfall. Blake's voice cracked. This isn't justice. No, Amina said quietly. This is accountability. Briggs grabbed him by the arm. Sit down, Blake. Now. But Blake's rage spun into desperation. I've served for 15 years. I've protected this city. And you just sit there judging everyone. Amina's face softened, not with sympathy, but with a fatigue she'd carried for years. I do not judge everyone, she said softly. I judge actions. Today yours. Silence fell. Deep absolute. Briggs finally pulled Blake down into his chair. Blake stared at the table, chest heaving, face crumbling into something raw, unguarded, frightened. Amina continued. As for sentencing recommendations, this court refers the matter to the disciplinary board with a strong recommendation for termination and mandatory bias training prior to any future reinstatement requests. A single officer in the gallery whispered. Damn! Another quietly said. It was coming. Blake's hand shook violently. This isn't fair, he whispered. Amina looked at him. Not with cruelty, not with triumph, but with weary truth. Fairness, she said, is what happens when power stops bending the rules for itself. The gavel struck once. This court is adjourned. The moment she left the bench, the gallery exploded. Reporters shouting questions, community members cheering or crying, officers retreating in tight formation. Cameras flashed. Voices echoed. Amina kept walking. Through the noise. Through the chaos. Through the storm she never asked for. She stepped into chambers, closing the door gently behind her. Her shoulders sagged. Gabe whispered, Judge, it's done. Amina sank into her chair. Yes. And it cost more than anyone will ever know. He nodded quietly. Justice always does. Her eyes closed. She finally let herself feel the tremor she'd been holding in. Tomorrow she would face the world again. But today she needed silence.